Yeah, we'll stand in front. Okay, so I'm with, guess who I'm with today? Outside of Speaker's Corner. I'm not showing your face yet. Have a guess. I'll let people write down. I'll give you like 5 tries. I don't think you will guess, but it's Bob the Builder. So it's very rare that I go out of my way outside of Speaker's Corner to meet someone from Speaker's Corner. But when this dude asked me, I was like, how can I pass up the opportunity? One of the things people don't realise is that although we both frequent Speaker's Corner, but because we're both inundated with people all the time, like wherever I walk, people are trying to kind of harass me or talk to me. He has the same situation. We've never really communicated in a kind of one-to-one constructive way. So today what I'm going to do is talk about, I call him Bob the Destroyer, not Bob the Builder, in a good way. He does destroy a lot of minds at Speaker's Corner, which is why he's being, what is it, I think they've blocked him now.
Who?
Blacklisted you.
Who else?
The Dawa team.
Oh, yeah. He
So,
seems to be avoiding debate.
well-
But Mansour's agreed that he's going to debate me on Christ divinity, so...
Oh yes, all right.
We-
But
we-
I always say that when the Dawa team blacklist you, it means that you have destroyed their minds.
So is this live stream?
I'm not live stream. I'm going to record and then upload it tomorrow.
Fair enough. I'm just thinking, let's walk into
Yeah.
the grounds a bit.
So can you just explain what this is then?
So this is a statue, Return of the Prodigal. So it is the Return of the Prodigal Son.
Yeah.
And as you can see from the plaque, it was done by a guy called Charlie McKay.
Right.
We stood outside of Holy Trinity, Brompton.
Yeah.
No, this is not the church I go to for
Yeah.
anyone who's going to jump to that conclusion. But we were looking for a place to film,
Yeah.
and I just know that it's got a big long driveway that you can stand in. So
Alright,
there
that's
you
cool.
go.
Yeah, I mean, this is we'll go to art in a minute. This is modern art to a certain degree. I think it's in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
It's actually not too bad, thank God. But some of the modern art. has become-
Well, I mean, it's not my favourite statue.
Yeah, I mean, it's not mine either. I think it should have went. I mean, there's a reason. I think art also kind of like shows you the depravity of your culture as well, in a way.
True.
The way that art is kind of, because I'm an artist myself, and my favourite art.
What do you think to Impressionist art?
I hate it. Well, not impressionist. I hate modern art. I went to the Modern Art Museum and it was absolute garbage.
Yeah.
I felt like kicking the walls and chucking the paintings down because somebody, when you look at the old architecture of Rome and you look at the statues and the art, Leonardo da Vinci and stuff like that, these things are going to resonate forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. But art that is debauched or kind of influenced by kind of modern society is going to go out
Do you
of
have a
fashion.
favourite artist?
My favourite artist is actually a comic artist, Todd McFarlane.
Oh, okay.
But I do love people like Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci. I'm not into the more kind of impressionist like Van Gogh and them lot.
Yeah.
That's not my kind of thing. But
I
I
like Rembrandt.
Yeah. I mean, I like more realistic kind of artwork. Some of the stuff from
Yeah.
the UK in the past is some really, really beautiful stuff. So this is the church, isn't it?
This is Holy Trinity, Brompton. Yeah. This is the.
And this is a
famous-
Catholic church, is it?
No. This is a Church of England church. It's famous
Oh, right.
for being the church that gave birth to what's known as the Alpha Course,
All right.
which is now a worldwide evangelistic course that's used everywhere, basically.
And do you
So
think
I was thinking-
are we allowed to go in at later stage or?
Yeah, we can go in later.
But no filming though.
I wouldn't film, no.
No.
But
All right.
I suggest we do your interview.
Yeah, we'll do it here. All right.
Um,
So I'm just going to chat to Bob the Builder. We can sit down if you want. Well, I'm going to sit down and just kind of ask a few questions that I've actually. And before everyone starts moaning, yes, I've got my cap on today. I haven't got my. I've got all these people in the comments saying, "Why is he wearing his turban?" None of your business. I can wear what I want. So
Okay.
they seem to comment a lot. So one of the things is that I was going to ask you, like, you had a conversation on Sunday, which got quite heated. I'll put a link below, and it was. I agreed with you. You was quite blunt, but I think sometimes you're going to be blunt that the West is kind of imploding within itself, and that's because traditional values have been lost, and the culture of the UK has gone from something like this, and you've got beautiful architecture, the arts, the music, and stuff like that. And now when people think of British culture, they just think of drinking and going out on a Friday night, and that's not what it is for me. But that's what it seems like for a lot of the people looking in. So you was talking about traditional values being lost, and obviously for you as a Christian, one of the ways to regain traditional values is to regain Christianity as the religion of most people in the UK.
Mm.
Is that a kind of a good grasp of what you were saying or not? Or
Well, what I think, what I was arguing with Vinny was that there are a group of people
Yeah.
in our society who tend to be on the right wing of politics,
Yeah.
who wish to use Christianity for their own politics.
Yeah.
So they want to talk about, oh, this is a Christian country, and
Yeah.
people that, and they want to blame Muslims for
Yeah.
the fact that that society is changing.
Yeah.
And they want to blame immigrants for the
Yeah.
fact that society is changing.
Yeah.
And they use the term Christian as a moniker in that. So they'll talk about a Christian country,
Yeah.
how they are cultural Christians.
Yeah.
And yet when you invariably put these people to the test, they don't know anything about the Christian faith.
Yeah.
And they are
Can I just say I do know Vinny quite well, so I'll
Okay, that's
I mean,
fine.
I know him pretty well.
So they don't know anything of the Christian faith, and so to talk about defending a culture
Yeah.
when you have separated yourself from what has influenced and formed that culture for the vast majority of its history,
Yeah.
strikes me as a pragmatic use of religion at best.
Yeah.
And at worst, it is a Machiavellian use
Right.
of the term Christian.
So do you feel it's disrespectful the way they use religion as more of a kind
Well,
of?
the thing is, I've made no bones about it. I'm also against Islamization.
Yeah.
I am also.
So am I actually.
Uh,
Sorry, I've got
I'm
to do that.
also against, cultural Marxism.
Yeah.
I'm against liberal, laissez-faire
Yeah.
capitalism.
Yeah.
I think the thing that needs to be influencing our culture is the Christian faith.
Yeah.
And the Christian community is its own community.
Yeah.
We're our own people, our own brotherhood, our own family. We're our own body of people with our own political concerns.
Yeah.
And for these kind of right-wing conservatives to hijack the Christian faith for the use of their political agenda,
Yeah.
when they have no real appreciation, connection, or love
Yeah.
to that Christian agenda.
Most of them are actually anti-theist.
Yeah, exactly. So what that means, therefore, is that Christians from Africa actually have more in common with the Christian ancestors of the English than their
They didn't like that.
modern day descendants.
They didn't like that.
No, of course they don't.
Yeah.
So the thing is, you've got to choose. Like,
Yeah.
what are you defending?
Yeah.
Are you defending what English culture is today?
Yeah.
Which is a very confused, mixed up identity with no clear point of commonality.
Yeah.
It's so diluted it means nothing.
Yeah.
Or are you trying to defend a more historical English identity? And if you're going to defend a more historical English identity, then you can't do that without defending Christianity.
Yeah, I agree with you. Because when you look it's quite sad. It's something that I speak about when people are going to say, why am I defending? I'm not defending Christianity. I think Christianity as a faith is a well-rounded faith, and for me personally, I even said it on a live stream the other day, which was with the gin and tonic, with all these atheists and stuff. I said, look, I don't want people to become atheists.
Yeah.
That's not my aim. Do I want them to become Muslim? Probably not, no, because I don't think it's a well-rounded faith. So the alternative is to either become Sikh or to become Buddhist or to become Christian. So, and the reason I say that, and I don't know if you probably agree, is that because one of the things that Muslims have kind of now to a certain degree is this, because of their faith, this traditional values, which I believe is too extreme, but it's still a form of values that creates a stable family where they can have children and they can propagate their populations. And what's happening in the West is that this is going to be quite controversial, and it's a topic I did want to speak about. Abortion. My stance on abortion is it's murder. I am quite straightforward with it. I think it's a disgusting practice. The only time I would agree with someone having an abortion is they've been abused or raped. Other than that, I think it's destroying the West.
Well,
I think you spoke about abortion. What is your kind of stance on abortion as a
my
Christian?
abortion is that I'm dead against it, totally. And the reason why I'm dead against it is because unless there is a justified reason, there is, and by a justified reason, I mean something that's in line with the teaching that God has given through his prophets and apostles, then there is no justified reason to kill your own children. You know, I mean, countless societies kill children as an accident in terms of a wider cause, like in World War II, both sides would have found the killing of innocent children, unless, well, no, let's rephrase that. The Allies found the killing of innocent children abhorrent, but nevertheless did things that they knew would be killing children.
Can I just interrupt for one thing? Because
you go. Finish, Raj, because you know, a big narrative on the right wing of politics is that, oh, you know, the Muslims are having 6 children and we're not, and the Muslims are breeding like rabbits. Well, the fact of the matter is, the English have given up on the family. And because they've given up on the family, to keep society's economy ticking over, the state has to import population to replace the population that the English are not having. And you cannot criticize a group of people for holding on to something that works. The family works. So if you're going to, on one hand, say, well, you shouldn't, you know, this is a common phrase amongst sort of like the right, breed like rabbits. But you're gonna you can't blame people for holding on to an institution that works and the family works. And so I don't criticize Muslims for having strong families. They're not the only ones that have strong families. Sikhs have strong families.
It's breaking down as well.
Jews have one family. Jews have strong families. Traditional Christian cultures like Africa, the Middle East, East Asia have strong families. It's something about the Western world. Polish Christians have strong families. Colombian Christians have strong families. There's something about the Western world that has abandoned the idea of the family. And it's that abandoning the family that is harming British society, not immigration. Immigration is a result of the English abandoning the family. So people who are claiming to defend England whilst also upholding the ideas of contraception, divorce and abortion are people who are shooting themselves in the foot and then going out to fight a battle.
I do agree with you. One of the things I was going to kind of say midway through was that I believe that a fetus has a soul. So whether and a mother, no offense to people who have had abortions, I do think it's murder and you're killing your own child. And so it's a very serious thing. I mean, the problem I have with abortion nowadays is just like someone going to a shop, and it's so, you know, there's no impact. They walk in and walk out. And this is a problem I have a lot with a lot of kind of the Western culture at the moment. Things that were at one point seen as being, barbaric or kind of immoral has now become the norm. And that is cultural Marxism, in the sense that they're trying to make, I mean, no offense to homosexuals. I do not want to harm any homosexual. I don't want to punish any homosexuals, but I do not think it's right. I think God will judge whether it's right or wrong. But now we have a situation where the traditional family is like, oh, motherhood is nothing. It's like, I believe motherhood is the greatest thing you can ever do. My mum's a queen, and she's given birth to me. But now a mother is like, what's the big deal? It's not a big deal. And homosexuality is being kind of thrust upon people as being something that's totally normal. And what is your kind of views? And I know it's kind of a controversial subject, but this is why I'm speaking to you here about it. Because I think if we was in Speaker's Corner, we'd get inundated with people screaming and stuff. So what is your views on this kind of homosexuality in a traditional family, kind of maybe being affected by homosexuality in some way?
Well, I mean, that's a massive question to ask. I'll pick up on the theme of cultural Marxism, because certainly during the Cold War, the USSR had a deliberate policy of cultural war. And the reason for that is that they wanted to sow dissent and fracture within the West as a way of weakening the West, for the hope of then stirring up a revolutionary US that they justify some kind of invasion or conflict or takeover.
Yeah.
And as part of that, they attacked those institutions and those ideas and beliefs that bound people together in solidarity against the USSR, or against the idea of a identity, of a working class proletariat revolutionary identity. So they attacked and tried to dismantle other identities that would stand as a bulwark against that proletariat identity.
Oh.
And the reason why they did that, so the things that they identified were the church, nationalism, and the family, and they therefore sought, because it's always been a mantra of the Marxists that religion is the opiate of the people, that what it did is it made people satisfied with their conditions rather than wanting to change their conditions. They wanted to attack the family because, you know, you wouldn't, if you thought if your family would be affected negatively by something, such as being a revolutionary, you might think twice about becoming one. And they wanted to attack nationalism because obviously that goes against the idea of the communist bloc, the idea of the solidarity of workers internationally. So they attacked all of these things, and in the process tried to create narratives that would destroy those institutions. Now, long after the USSR has died, the seed that they sow has bore fruit in what we call liberal progressive thought, who hate the West but really have no understanding as to why. They
Would you put Antifa under that umbrella?
Yes. These anarchist movements are a fruit of decades of cultural Marxist work to try to create fracture within society. But the reason behind it was never about, has long since forgotten, but those movements that have been sown of dissent and of counter narratives are now bearing fruit long after the USSR is gone. So, with regards to the family, I'm going to speak about the family as it is the fundamental building block of a society. If you don't have strong families, you don't have a strong society, because a family is your first police force, it's your first mental health practice, it's your first GP, it's your first school, it's your first line of many of the things, the structures that we look to the state to do. And if you weaken the family, then the state ends up having to do more of those things. Which is what we see in our society, because the family has not been valued and it's been diluted, and anyone can create any kind of family that they want, and so it's become a meaningless term, and resources are not targeted towards strengthening the family of blood ties and adoption that create that strong block. And the result of that is we see an increase in many kind of social problems. And I think if you look at all cultures through history, they've always acknowledged that the procreating family is the best model upon which to build community, build society, because invariably every culture, regardless of where it is, has defaulted to that model, regardless of what their opinions are on different sexualities, which were various at various different times in human history. But they all defaulted to the idea that the family of mother and father and bloodlines is your default structure. That can't be by accident. There's obviously something in that, which is that the family of bloodline is something that creates the best framework and network upon which society can prosper and grow. And this is a Christian truth. It is something that the church acknowledges. It's something that's within natural law. So it wasn't the church that gave birth to this idea. It's that the church has, through the revelation of the apostles, simply validated a natural law that is prevalent within society at large. So anything that distracts from that anything that dilutes the emphasis that should rightly have within our society is harmful to society, ultimately. And that's what we see since the 1960s, is a movement to dilute the family and its value in society to the point of meaninglessness. And we have resulted in an increase in youth crime, mental health problems. The fact that there's not enough people looking after their elders is a prime example, which is then passing the burden on to the state. So the state is trying to pick up the bill for where strong families once stood. And ultimately that is something that is unsustainable. And whether society and the liberal progressives like it or not, at some point it's going to go back to the family, because the state will just not be able to afford to keep picking up the bill of what the family does naturally.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I do say a lot myself, I think you've agreed, you've touched upon that, is I have a lot of kind of people on the right, sorry Vinny and all of these guys, I always say it to their face anyway, so whatever I'm saying now I say it to people's faces. They're constantly going on about, oh, the demographics are going to change, but it's the West's own fault. If you're not having babies and you're aborting 100,000 a year, then ultimately if another culture comes in with a stronger traditional value system, they will ultimately take over or start to replace you at some point. So, obviously there will be atheists saying that we don't need religion to have a moral code, and I kind of agree to that to a certain degree. I think people that innately have a moral code, unless you're a psychopath, but the church and like religion, and whether it's Sikhism or whether it's Christianity, does give that framework which is kind of rigid, and allows it to kind of like, I mean, there's a reason why Christianity has lasted so long and the West has dominated, is because of probably traditional values. And once that's being lost, do you think the West at some point, it's quite a loaded question, could come to a point where Islam is going to be the predominant religion of the UK over Christianity? Do you think that's
I'm not a prophet. I'm not a prophet, so I don't know the future. What I do know is that the fastest growing religion in this country, the fastest growing philosophy in this country is atheism. Outstrips Islam by miles. The idea that Islam is the fastest growing worldview in this country is nothing but a mantra. It's not based in fact. Atheism is the fastest growing philosophy. And the reason why atheism is the fastest growing philosophy is that liberal forms of Christianity are collapsing. Liberal forms of Christianity that abandoned apostolic and prophetic teaching for enlightenment thinking are imploding. And as they implode, they are producing lots of atheists. And it's not surprising, because liberal forms of Christianity are incoherent, they are insipidly weak, they provide no real strong identity, and people are abandoning it in droves because it never
the churches are empty now.
No, there's plenty of churches.
Well, the ones that I see in my area, because we've got more of a mixed thing here, I think there's a lot. When I say, all right, let me rephrase that, because it's quite.
Allow me to finish my point, Raj. So, like the atheism is the fastest growing belief system. Now, but the thing is, as a society adopts an atheistic worldview, invariably, the more atheist it becomes, the less children it has. Because the thing about atheism is that it cuts away at that thing which binds us, that thing which unites us. And the reason why it cuts away at those things that unite and bind us is because for a people to have a sense of themselves, they have to have a common history, a common language. They have to have a common sense of time, festival. They have to have common rituals. They have to have common beliefs. Without those things, there is no sense of a people to speak of. The church is a people, and that is because we have common beliefs and common values. We have common festivals, and many of us have common rituals. Well, all of us have common rituals if we reduce it down to baptism and the sacrament of reconciliation. But in terms of the sacrament of the Eucharist, but in terms of an atheistic society, well, once you get rid of God, what do you unite people around? And that's where liberal humanism steps in. Because liberal humanism is an attempt to try and fill the void. But the problem about liberal humanism is that everyone knows that it is just rooted in the opinions of men. So why should we follow it, ultimately?
Is liberal humanism similar to cultural Marxism, or is it slightly different?
No, liberal humanism predates Marxism. Actually, Marxism is a form of liberal humanism.
Yeah, all right.
Humanism is the idea of placing God, replacing God with this sort of universal concept of humanity. And the project of the Enlightenment was a move in many ways from a God-centered understanding of the world to a man-centered understanding of the world. And as a result of that man-centered understanding of the world, they have resulted in... It's a logic that kind of implodes eventually. Because if someone says to you, well, you know, you should respect humanity and you should do A, B, and C. Well, why? If you know it's just a man's opinion, why can't another man come up with a better opinion? So that's what Nietzsche did. He came up with the idea of the Übermensch, the idea of the Superman. You know, this idea of the triumphal person who pursues excellence in one field or another, as a way of getting away from an insipidly weak kind of liberalism, which he also understood to be Christianity as well. So in answer to your question, do I think that Islam could take over, in quote marks? I don't know. Do I think...
All right, let me rephrase.
Let me finish my point.
Hold on, let me just read.
Go. Because I don't know, but what I do know is the success of radical Islam is due to the weakness of liberal culture.
All right.
And I know that you cannot challenge a theistic ideology with an atheistic ideology. And I know, because it just doesn't have the lasting power. And I know that in terms of Christian history, we've had 1400 years of defending ourselves against forceful attempts of Islamization to varying degrees of success. We've lost great swathes of land through Islamic conquest, but ultimately we held out in Europe. And we've got surviving communities in places like Egypt. The Christian church has proven itself successful in resisting Islamization. So what hope do we have? I think it has to be based upon a return to a muscular Christian faith. I don't think liberal humanism is sufficiently strong to resist Islamization. But does that mean that Islamization will succeed? Well, I mean, we know that certain Salafist groups are pushing that, but let's be honest, not every Muslim is pushing that. And the vast majority of Muslims are just bread and butter Muslims. Go to work, go to mosque for circumcisions, funerals and weddings. You know, try to pray, often don't. Try to fast, often fail. You know, it's the hardcore network that we know exists that is trying to push something. Whether they will have success is God knows. I mean, we can't predict the future. What I just do know with certainty is that liberalism is not the answer.
I agree with you on that. I was going to rephrase. I know Bob the Builder's turning me off. I do interrupt a lot. I don't mind. What it is I was going to say about... I do like the fact that you said muscular kind of Christianity, in the sense that one thing I've always found quite difficult to see when I see Christians is this lovey-dovey, wishy-washy kind of Christianity, which is... I think for a faith to survive, you need what I call the saint soldier ethos, which is that as a Sikh, that's a very, it's paramount. You must be a saint. You can't just be a saint by itself. It's pointless. And you can't just be a soldier. You must have both. And that is something that when I went to the park originally, I saw lacking until you turned up, and I think you've kind of re-energized the whole of the Christian groups down there to kind of have a bit more of a, let's just say, a saint soldier. Do you agree with that kind of philosophy, or is that something that's against Christianity?
Yeah, no, that I mean, it's you know, you're using a Sikh concept, but the Sikh community developed that concept precisely under intense persecution by the Muslims in the place where Sikhism took hold. But it was also a Christian concept. So if you look up at C.S. Lewis, if you look up C.S. Lewis's writing, he talks about chivalry. and this code of chivalry, which was a construct of the Christian church. And the code of chivalry was essentially to take two extremes and to allow them to live together at the same time.
Right.
So the two extremes was meekness and heroism, and that by heroism it was meant heroism in battle.
Yeah.
Valor, courage, being barbarous on the battlefield, and then on the other side being meek and humble. And he talked about how the church attempted to cultivate those two things together as a way that would restrain men of violence from being violent repugnantly against, maidens, damsels, innocents, the poor, the weak,
Code of conduct.
To stop them being thugs.
Yeah.
So that when the knight, the chivalrous Christian knight, which existed in legend and poetry,
when you say legend, are you saying that they were not real?
King Arthur's legend. So what I'm saying is that the church codified and cultivated a sense of chivalry by appealing to exemplary knights, some of which didn't exist. So like
King Arthur
and Sir Lancelot.
Yeah.
And the idea, but then real examples as well. Like Saint Louis IX or Saint Louis X of France. So the idea, it was cultivating this ideal of a Christian warrior who, when faced with invading Saracens or the invading Vikings or the invading pagan Slavs, would be barbarous on the battlefield, ferocious, terrifying, unyielding, unafraid, charging it headlong into hordes of thousands when you're only numbering hundreds. But then on the other hand, when faced with a damsel, a lady of the court, would be chivalrous, genteel, which is where we either get the idea of gentlemanly conduct or the gentleman. And when they came across the poor, they would be saintly. So you have examples of knightly conduct being remembered as rich knights cutting their cloak in two and giving half to the poor man. Don't know why I didn't give the whole one, but you get the idea. Maybe it was a big bloke. So the point is, the church was cultivating this idea of, to put it in your terms, the saintly soldier. And what we need in England particularly is a recovery of that concept, a saintly soldier, because the English, particularly, groups like the EDL, all of these groups that say they want to stand up for their culture, and then are often seen behaving like total thugs. It's because they've got the ferocity to fight, but they've got no internal discipline.
Yeah, I agree.
And they've got no moral code of values. I mean, the idea that people should harangue a Muslim woman because she's wearing a hijab. That's barbaric. It is unbecoming of anyone who seeks to be a saintly soldier to harangue the weak. And that is regardless of who they are. If those same people were to stand up to the likes of Anjem Chowdhury, unlike that Muppet in Leeds that's on camera, he saw that Islamist who'd just come out of prison and then decided he wanted to have a race with him on his bike. I think you've seen the video.
I've seen that.
What a total Muppet! It's like that's fear. So the church needs to rediscover this sense of the saintly soldier. The Christian church needs to discover that.
Watch out.
What was that? What?
Yeah, it's probably the Islamic devil trying to get you. Only joking. I got a very bad sense of humour.
Yeah. That was a crap joke.
No, sorry.
But the point is, ironic in the midst of talking about courage a little bit. No, anyway. So the point is that the church needs to rediscover this idea of the saintly soldier. And that very concept would be something that would do England good if England recovered it as well. Because the English at this moment in time, fall into either cowardly appeasement or thuggish barbarism. And to be clear, the chivalrous knight is not someone who is like a mixture of the two. He's not half and half. He is both things at the extreme at the same time. The church is too timid and weak. It needs to rediscover heroism. It needs to rediscover courage. It needs to rediscover valor. You know, and many in the working class, particularly, you know, people like Vinny, you know, all willing to be, you know, heroic, but with the undisciplined thuggishness is how it ends up coming across. You know.
All right, I've got two last questions, the two most controversial questions, and so we can give you the two most controversial.
Just find every controversial angle you can.
Yeah. I thought, well, the thing is, the reason why I'm doing it here is because I've wanted to ask these questions at Speaker's Corner, and the reason I haven't is because I know once we talk about them, say if I was talking about compulsion, we will then have a whole swathe of people kind of interrupting and giving their opinion and kind of making you feel like you're saying something that might be disrespectful to someone. The thing what I find quite unique about you is that when I normally talk to other Christians, you have, this particular denomination is a Christian, that denomination is a Christian. But when I ask you, you seem to have a unified kind of belief about Christianity, including Catholicism, which, if I'm being honest, I've got my own views on Catholicism, which is not.
I like Catholic church.
I like Catholics as people. And I think but I have a problem with the Vatican and the Pope and that whole structure. Not Catholicism, but the Vatican. I think it has a history which is very marred with, let's just say ungodly behaviour sometimes. I know it sounds quite controversial. So how comes you have come to the point where you classify all of these people as Christian, whereas a lot of other Christians will say no, that one isn't, that one isn't, that one is. How have you got to that point then?
So that was a journey. I started off being an Anglican. That was where I started off my journey of faith in an Anglican church. And I moved from that to a Roman Catholic church. And then I was never a hard Anglican or hard Roman Catholic. I was always kind of very open to the idea that there were Christians in other churches. And as I continued to study the faith, what I realised is that every single denomination of the church is the result of a particular historical context, socio-economic and political, as well as a religious theological outlook in terms of how the church polity should be structured. And for me, like, I got to ask myself, the very earliest Christians, this denominationalism that we now find ourselves in would have been totally alien to them. They were able to recognise those who were Christian from those who were not Christian, and they didn't have to use denominations to do that. They had the concept of a Catholic church, Catholic in the small c, the universal sense. And in terms of understanding what that church was, they understood it based upon how people viewed the Christ and worshipped God. And as such, I can identify anyone who is a Christian by how they view Christ and how they worship God. And if you're saying that Christ is your Lord and Saviour, you're saying Christ saved you from sin, and you're worshipping God as Father, Son and Holy Spirit, then you're a Christian.
All right.
And to divide ourselves, I think, is against everything that the apostles and the prophets taught. The apostles speak clearly against denominationalism. It's in the Gospels, it's in their letters, and yet the church divides itself and tries to justify its divisions. And really what we're doing is we are saying that the prides of men is more important than faithfulness to God. So I try to live a Christian life that isn't denominational, and I am happy to embrace anyone who is a Christian, who accepts Christ as their Lord and Saviour, and who worships God as a Trinity. And whether that I find them in the Catholic Church, or whether I find them in the Anglican Church, or whether I find them in a Baptist Church or a Pentecostal Church, whether I find them in an Evangelical Church or in an Orthodox Church, for me, you know,
are Mormons Christians or Jehovah's Witnesses?
Mormons are not Christians, no. And the reason why they're not Christians is because they don't worship the Trinity.
All right. What about Jehovah's Witnesses?
They also don't worship the Trinity.
All right. Right. Yeah, that's. We'll go into the questions about Catholicism in a later discussion, maybe in Speaker's Corner, because I've kind of opened out now.
Yeah.
The last question is going to be something I've been talking about quite a lot with Muslims, and so let's be fair and let's give Christianity a little bit of a prod as well. One of the reasons I believe I cannot be part of the Abrahamic faiths, I mean, you understand what the Abrahamic faiths are: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and I'm part of the Dharmic faiths, is because of the concept of heaven and hell. And I've been talking about this. I don't normally talk about theology at Speaker's Corner, and because I don't literally believe. I mean, I believe in a heaven in the sense that you unify with God through love, and there's not a literal kind of a heaven where you're sitting around like in Islam with virgins, and sounds quite good, but rivers of wine and all
Unless
that.
you're a woman, in which case it probably sounds
So it sounds very humanistic in terms of a man-made kind of like paradise. And then I don't agree with their hell, because when I looked into the hell of Islam, it seems more of a vindictive torture chamber for God to kind of eternally torture His creation for mistakes that they've made in their lifetime. And so obviously I don't believe in the hell, because I believe in reincarnation. We could talk about that at a later date, maybe in Speaker's Corner, the validity of that. What is I'm still kind of, I was trying to research the Christian hell. The Islamic hell is quite concrete, that if you're not a Muslim, you're going to go to hell, and God would eternally burn you, pulling your skin off and chucking apples down your throat like trees like this. There's fruits on there, and they constantly feed you this fruit, which is burning your internals, and it's eternal. So for me, if God is loving, merciful, forgiving, and compassionate, this kind of eternal, remember, eternity is not a trillion years or a billion years. It is going on forever. What is the Christian stance on hell for a non-believer or somebody that's committed a sin?
Okay. There's I want to start by just saying that the premises of the question are flawed.
Yeah.
Because there isn't Abrahamic faiths. There's only an Abrahamic faith.
All right. Yeah.
And that is the faith of Abraham, and the covenant that was established through Isaac, that continued into what we call Judaism, and then from Judaism into Christianity. Islam has nothing to do with Abraham at all. And the only reason why we've got this phrase is because our political statesmen have decided to craft this idea of Abrahamic faiths as a way of serving their political agenda to create harmony within society by saying that really we're all children of Abraham, and it's just got nothing to do with anything historical at all.
All right, that's interesting.
However, your question was with regards to hell.
Yeah.
And the Christian faith does speak very clearly about lakes of fire, where worms eat and the flames burn eternal. And Christ himself speaks very clearly about that in the Gospels as part of a judgment. And it is based upon how people have or have not, as it were, acknowledged the Son of Man, Christ, as their Saviour, and then performed works in keeping with that faith. So, people can claim that Christ is their Messiah, but if they don't actually follow him, then their faith is void. And if you're going to follow Christ, then you will be like Christ, and you will do the things that Christ teaches you. And that means doing things like honouring your mother and father. It means things like helping the poor, the widow, the orphan, those that are most vulnerable within society. And it means loving your brothers and sisters in Christ, because that's what Christ calls us to do. Now, on Judgment Day, you are first separated by those who have and have not followed Christ the Messiah. And Christ is the one who does that clearly on Judgment Day, which is why we understand Christ to be divine, because that's a role that only God should do. So either Christ shouldn't have made the claim that he's going to do it, or he's not God, or he is God. Now, in terms of the judgment, it talks about hell and it talks about heaven in very graphic terms. And for most Christians through most of our history, that's been interpreted as a literal thing. I can't say that I have studied the kind of interpretations that I've heard about, but I've never given myself time to look into it deeply. But I believe that I've heard in passing references discussion that some of the church fathers interpreted that allegorically, not as literally.
Yeah.
However, I don't know enough about what the church fathers have said on that to come up with an opinion. So I'm just going to say that the Christian view of hell is similar to the Islamic view of hell. But our views of heaven are very different. Because our view of heaven is that in terms of the believer, they are drawn into a unity with God, that they have what's called the beatific vision, that they see God and know God, and are drawn with all angels and saints in the worship of God. But the idea of a burning lake of fire, for the moment, until I've looked into it more, and I will when we talk.
Yeah, well, I think that's a conversation we can have.
They are similar to the Islamic.
So when your description of heaven, so it's not like the Islamic heaven where there's rivers of wine and a literal kind of like almost like earth, but put up there with on steroids.
If you give me enough money, I can create something very close to an Islamic.
Yeah, you're right actually.
If you give me enough money, I can
Hugh
produce
Hefner.
that for you. Well, I mean, like, I don't think Hugh Hefner had rivers of wine.
I mean, if you could have, if he
he
wanted to.
Virgins, but the point is that their vision of heaven is quite earthly.
Very earthly.
It's very earthly. Whereas the celestial vision, if I give you in Revelations, it's compared to a marriage. Now, obviously, that language immediately strikes as metaphorical.
Do you unify with God, like kind of like
I'll just give you an example of the scene of heaven. This is from Revelations chapter 4. After these things I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven, and the first voice which I had heard. Oh, hold on, my apologies. So this would be an example of the beatific vision.
Do you mind if I
yeah?
Have a look at that?
So if you can get it in.
Where do I need to go?
So it's chapter 4. This whole chapter.
So
I'll read some clippets from it. So after these things I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven, and the first voice which I had heard, like the sound of a trumpet, speaking with me, said, "Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after these things." Immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne was standing in heaven, and the one sitting on the throne, and he was sitting, and he who was sitting was like a jasper stone, and a sardius in appearance. And there was a rainbow around the throne, like an emerald in appearance. Around the throne were 24 thrones, and upon the throne I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white garments, and golden crowns on their heads. And then it talks about the worship of the Creator. Out from the throne came flashes of lightning and sounds and peals of thunder. So this is what we call the beatific vision, the idea of seeing God in all of his glory. And there was 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. And before the throne there was something like a sea of glass, like crystal, and in the centre and around the throne 4 living creatures, full of eyes in front and behind. The first creature was like a lion, and the second creature like a calf, and the third creature had a face like that of a man, and the fourth creature was like a flying eagle. And the 4 living creatures, each one of them having 6 wings, are full of eyes around and within, and the day and night they do not cease to say, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God, the Almighty, who was and who is to come."
Right.
So the idea of Christian worship is that we are all united in worship of God. And that it is that the ultimate heaven for us is that we see, experience, know God in the fullness of his glory. Which is a completely different concept from having mansions, rivers of wine, and sex.
I saw some.
Which I just want to say sounds incredibly boring from a female's point of view.
Yeah, it is.
You know,
Maybe they're washing the dishes.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, it's a very masculine view of heaven.
Well, I saw a video where they were going up to children and going, up to men and going, oh, what would you want in heaven? And they had to always do the caveat or the preface of saying, except for the virgins, yeah? Because they knew every man, what they were going to say was, we want the virgins. So they would say, what else do you want on top of that? So you can see the mindset of that kind of a man-made kind of literal heaven upstairs. Doesn't sound very godly. Sorry, Muslims. But
it's a debasement, because if we think, I think most Muslims, most people would recognise that lust is one of the baser values to be moved by. If you act on lust, more often than not, that's not going to be taking you to the good. It's going to take you to some kind of evil. Whether that's cheating on your wife, or sleeping around, or looking lustfully at someone who's not your wife, or admiring, like page 3 girls. Lust, we recognise, is something that is quite debasing to the dignity of man. And yet a vision of heaven is the vision of heaven in the Quran is ultimately rooted to something that we recognise on earth is quite debased. Now that doesn't mean that the sexual desire, when properly directed towards one wife, is not a good thing. But let's be honest, that's not the vision that's been given in the Quran. In the Quran, what's been given is a multiplicity of virgins. So that is appealing to man's lust, which means it's appealing to that which most Muslims themselves recognise in an earthly context is a bad thing. Now, how can something that we recognise as not leading us to the good on earth be something that's being appealed to try and draw you to heaven?
I mean, it's what I always say is like everything that's sinful in the world is seen as plentiful in Islamic heaven. It doesn't really make sense. It's either sinful here and it's sinful there, or it's not sinful. So we'll leave it at that. I think what we can do now that we've done the groundwork, we kind of know certain topics and where we stand. It'd be nice to kind of elaborate on a few of these topics at Speakers Corner, so we can have more of a discussion with other people in there as well. Because now I kind of know where you're coming from. I think it's easier for me to kind of talk to you. It was great to chat to you, my Christian brother, and
nice
hopefully. Are you going to be taking me around and showing me the church?
I'm going to show you these two churches.
So we can't really record now. I'm going to go to the church. I do really love churches. I think they're beautiful architecture.
Well, and the reason why I want to take Raj around churches is because I want to talk to him about his own faith.
Oh, all right. Maybe he's going to do dawah on me. Christian dawah.
I am going to do some evangelism.
Some evangelism. Let's see if he can convert me. I doubt it though. All right. So let's go. Come on. Let's go.